This is Barry Pearl. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that Jennifer Jones will join us later on in this hour. Jennifer Jones, the first African-American member of the Radio City Rockettes. In the meantime, we'll begin our second hour by playing part two of a conversation that began last week with Hal Eisner. Hal Eisner, the multiple award-winning broadcast journalist who covered the news every day for 58 years, including 15 years at various radio stations in Texas and Louisiana, and the last 43 years on television in Los Angeles, primarily as a field reporter for Fox 11, but also for KCOP Channel 13, and for a few years as a reporter for the Los Angeles Bureau of CNN. Hal's memoir, An Accidental Career, is the story of a kid from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who originally wanted to be a lawyer, but who found himself bitten by the broadcast bug when he was a teenager. Hal's book tells the story of a man who loved his job and the city to which he grew inseparable, and whose success as a broadcast journalist inspired him to give back and help mentor the next generation of news reporters, which Hal has done for the past 25 years through his annual boot camp, Camp News. An Accidental Career, my 58-year adventure as a broadcast news journalist by Hal Eisner, available wherever books are sold through Palmetto Publishing as well as Amazon.com. If you're listening to us in the greater LA metro area, you can meet Hal Eisner Wednesday, March 4th at Vroman's Bookstore in Pasadena, California, beginning at 7 p.m. For more information, go to the events page at vromansbookstore.com, V-R-O-M-A-N-S bookstore, vromansbookstore.com. You can follow Hal Eisner, haleisner.com, and just about everywhere else on social media. We've been mostly talking about Hal's career covering news in Los Angeles. As we pick up the conversation, though, Hal and I are talking a little bit about his career in radio. Hal worked in radio for several stations in Texas, including KLIF in Dallas. As we pick up the conversation, Hal and I are talking about a point of reference that he and I have in common with regard to KLIF. I've enjoyed your book on many levels.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. Thank you so much.
This means what it means. My first interview as a subject, as a guest, as I recall, was, I forget the guy's name, but he was the afternoon host on KLIF. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I did his show.
Charlie Van Dyke?
No, it was John.
Oh, later, after it was music, when it was talk.
Yeah, this would have been in the early 90s. I think, for some reason, I think John Rohde, the name came up, because it reminded me of John Brody.
When I was there, it was all music. It was pop. It was top 40.
Yeah. KLIF had made the transition to news talk. By the time.
Isn't that interesting how that works? But that's so cool that you were on KLIF.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And as someone who grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, it was cool to see such familiar names as Marsha Brandwin and Roberta Gonzalez in your book. So.
Well, Roberta and I are very, very close. Well, I haven't talked a little while, but you know, when I was with president of APTRA, the Associated Press Television Radio Association, she was the vice president, and she would always tease me in the voice of Marilyn Monroe and say, "Yes, Mr. President," and stuff like that. It was always just a wonderful moment of laughter between us. She's wonderful.
Yeah.
And Marsha was great to work with too. You know, she was a real solid anchor.
Yeah, and I thought it was cool that she came back to the Bay Area after, because she did the 10 o'clock news up in San Francisco, Oakland, through much of the 70s, and then she moved down here, I think, for like 8 or 10 years, and then she came back to San Francisco, which I thought was kind of cool. So, but
yeah, I saw her once up there. I did a little work for a minute up at KPIX.
Oh, okay.
And it was very early on when I was sort of in my early TV days after CNN. I flew up to KPIX on Mondays and came back on Fridays to spend the weekend at home with my wife. And I stayed out in Marin County.
Okay.
With family out there. And, yeah, it was kind of a great station to work for and do work with. And I worked a little bit with their L.A. bureau. It wasn't significant enough really to get into the book, but it was something that I did and I enjoyed.
Did you work with Dave McElhatton?
I did.
Okay, yeah. He was, like you, he was a radio, he was in radio longer than you were, as I recall, but there was speculation and some trepidation, and I use trepidation in air quotes, whether a career radio man can make the transition to television news. And he ended up anchoring Channel 5, I think, for the better part of 20 years, and he reached the point where nobody remembered that he was a radio guy because he became such a fixture to the broadcast community. So,
yeah, no, it's true.
An Accidental Career, My 58-Year Adventure as a Broadcast News Reporter by Hal Eisner, available wherever books are sold through Palmetto Publishing, as well as Amazon.com. For more on Hal, HalEisner.com. Plus, you can follow Hal Eisner pretty much everywhere on social media.
One more thing.
Sure.
I'm not sure. You've been mentioning about Palmetto, and Palmetto is an interesting publishing company. It's for those of us who want to self-publish, and they have a very interesting approach to it, and they've been wonderful in my experience. But I also don't think that they necessarily sell books. So I think that, as far as buying the books, I think it's more Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com. There's a whole bunch of these online sites, and all these stores. If you go into a store and you ask for it and they don't have it, ask them to order it for you, and that'll help us out. And there's a book signing coming up in Pasadena at Vroman's bookstore on March the 1st. So, we're getting a lot of activity, doing a lot of stuff surrounding this publication, and I'm really enjoying this so much. And I feel like I'm working again. I'm supposed to be retired.
Well, yeah, but see, you're working on what you want to do now versus whatever the newsroom wants you to do.
Right, except for 6 a.m. interviews on small-town radio stations in places like Texas, I can sleep late.
That's right.
Oh, there is an advantage to all of this. But I think that retirement is a very interesting thing. I've described it in the past as like living in a bowl of Jell-O, because unlike work which is structured, this is very unstructured. Retirement life is very unusual, and I think that I'm doing things like promoting the book, but I'm also taking art classes, and I'm hoping to dive in soon to guitar classes, and so I think you have time to do stuff, and part of that I want to travel, and I enjoy traveling, and I want to do so much more of that. So, I feel like I'm floating in a bowl of Jell-O, and time is mine, and I own it, and it's so much fun.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay Area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson, thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Hi, this is Ed Eisner, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
One of the other people we have in common is Ed Asner. Now, you've got a couple of good stories about encountering Ed through one way or another in the pages of An Accidental Career. I was lucky enough to talk to Ed about several times during the last decade of his life. I was lucky in that I got to know his publicist through one way or another, and I still work with his publicist. But Ed is an example of what happens sometimes. At least when you do a talk show, and you did talk shows in your radio days, so you understand how this works too, Hal. Sometimes you connect with a guest, and you will find a way to bring that guest back onto the show because they're good conversationalists and you like their company, and they like your company as well, and so they become part. One of my favorite memories of doing this particular program. One day, Ed and I were talking. We're promoting his play, A Man and His Prostate, and it happened to be. It was early in the baseball season that particular year, and Ed mentioned that the Dodgers won. And I said, it was a good day for the Blue, but tomorrow is another day. And I move on to my next question. And Ed picked up on that. He said, "What do you mean by that? Were you making a crack about the Dodgers?" And I confessed that being a transplant from San Francisco, I grew up on the other side of the Giants-Dodger rivalry. So Ed continued to bust my chops for the next 10 minutes, which was an authentic Ed Asner experience. But then. And this is the real takeaway of the story. We ended up talking about Vin Scully, who, like you, was an integral part of the whole LA community. Another example of how a reporter, a personality, can connect with 3 generations of people in a particular community in ways that you don't often realize while you're in the course of doing your job.
Well, Ed was. May his memory be a blessing, a wonderful guy. And I first connected with Ed on a story, might have been a red carpet. I don't honestly remember what the story was. It's been a long time. But even in subsequent meetings, Ed would always say, Eisner, Asner, we must be family. He used the Jewish word, the Yiddish word, mishpacha, which means family. And he would always say, Eisner, Asner, we must be mishpacha. And I always got a kick out of that. And you know what? His grandson follows me on social media. So I think that, it is a very small universe. Ed also was on the SAG-AFTRA National Board, as was I. Mm-hmm. And, I think that being in the same boardroom, having the experiences that we had together, I think it was really a great opportunity. There's something about being a journalist in Los Angeles. You have this added layer of an industry that is unique to this area. And you get to meet celebrities. You see them in restaurants. I remember Rob Schneider from Jaws. Mm-hmm. I remember going to a restaurant, Chandara, and I looked over a couple of tables down. There he was. This is their community just like it's our community. They are people just like we're people. They eat and just like we eat. They go to restaurants like we go to restaurants. They are just everyday folks, and they have a job to do just like I have a job to do, just like you have a job to do. And we're all one great big community of people trying to feed our families, trying to feed ourselves, trying to do things that we want to do and need to do. And I think that, when you meet the Ed Asners and others that I've met over the years, you really come to realize that we're all just people. And some of them are more celebrated than others because of the platform they have. But we're all just people.
An Accidental Career by Hal Eisner. It's a marvelous story of a man who spent the better part of 60 years giving back, covering big stories, large stories in between, celebrating the many people behind those stories and the collective human tissue that connects all of us. An Accidental Career by Hal Eisner, available wherever books are sold, Palmetto Publishing, as well as Amazon.com. Very quickly, before we wrap, one of the other takeaways, which you touched on several times throughout the pages of your book and throughout our conversation, is news report. Your book serves as a reminder that news reporting is another form of storytelling.
No, it is.
Yeah.
We tell, if you think about it, and I did this for nearly 60 years, and, just take 43 of them. Forget radio. Just take 43 of those years. Figure I worked about 300 days a year. Say if I had one story a day, let's not even take the days I did 2 or 3. So one story times 300 times 43 years. That's how many stories I did.
Yep.
And when you think about that, not only is it mind-boggling, but it's tens of thousands of stories. So it was time to tell mine.
And you have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything else about your book, about your story, Hal, that you want listeners to know that I have not already asked you?
Well, I think there are so many things in the book that I want people to read and hopefully get something from it. There's one chapter called "There Is No Fake News," which I think that, I sort of express some of my feelings about that controversial term. I think there's, more detail on things like the crash that put me in the hospital. I think there's just so many pictures to look at that tell you everything from the people I've met to the places I've been. And so I hope, like you, others will read the book and have the kind of takeaways that you had from it. But I guess the overarching thing is, again, I got into this business because of something that was accidental. We're not talking about a crash. We're talking about a detour, something that I hadn't planned, something inadvertent. And I think the moral of the story is when something happens that's inadvertent, pay attention to it. Take it seriously, because it might just change your life.
If you're listening to us in the greater LA metro area, you can meet Hal Eisner Wednesday, March 4th at Vroman's Bookstore, 695 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, California, Wednesday, March 4th, beginning at 7 p.m. For more information, go to the events page at vromansbookstore.com, VROMANS, romansbookstore.com. For our listeners everywhere, Hal Eisner's memoir, An Accidental Career, My 58-Year Adventure as a Broadcast News Reporter, are available wherever books are sold, Palmetto Publishing, as well as Amazon.com. Hal, let's stay in touch. Maybe later this year, if the spirit moves you, we'll have another conversation here on TV Confidential.
I would love to, and it's so good to talk with you. Thank you for your time, and thanks, everybody. All the best.
Jennifer Jones will join us later on the hour. Jennifer Jones, the first African-American member of the Radio City Rockettes. Jennifer Jones' story is also included in This Joint is Jumpin'. This Joint is Jumpin', new exhibit at the Hollywood Museum that honors the contributions of many notable black artists, singers, actors, writers, and sports figures of the 20th century, including Whitney Houston, Lena Horne, Denzel Washington, Ella Fitzgerald, the Pointer Sisters, Dionne Warwick, Forrest Whitaker, Wesley Snipes, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Angela Bassett, Muhammad Ali, Will Smith, Halle Berry, Viola Davis, Diana Ross, and Oprah Winfrey. The Hollywood Museum, of course, located at 1660 North Highland Avenue at Hollywood Boulevard in Hollywood, California. Tickets and more information, call 323-464-7776, 323-464-7776, or go to thehollywoodmuseum.com. This Joint is Jumpin' becomes open to the public Thursday, February 19th. Jennifer Jones will join us when we come back here on TV Confidential.
And what we do for our community is so important. We always have to remember what we do, despite whatever criticism there is so incredibly important. That First Amendment, it's our Bible, right? So we have to do our job as best as we can, despite whatever anybody ever wants to say.
Listen, were you forced into getting a solar contract and now you just don't want it anymore? Maybe the solar company misled you. Or is your solar contract buried with hidden fees? Are you not saving the amount of money you thought you would on your energy costs? Don't worry. At the Solar Exit Hotline, we can help you cancel your solar contract, even if the panels are already installed. Our experienced legal team will review your contract and help you cancel it, possibly saving you thousands of dollars. You got to call right now for complete details. So listen, if you're not happy with your solar contract for any reason, we are here to help you cancel it. Call the Solar Exit Hotline now for immediate options to help you exit your solar contract. This call is 100% free.
800-908-7197. 800-908-7197. 800-908-7197. That's 800-908-7197.